Now we head to Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Let's see how Johto handles the physical special split, as well as abilities. Falconer actually has Roost now, and Pidgeotto this early is actually quite strong, especially because of that. Remember, Roost is a very good move. With its high speed relative to most things, and the fact that it removes its flying typing, this does change up its weaknesses. Yes, it changes up some of its resistances as well, but it is still quite good because it now actually has a little bit of sustain. It can actually do quite well. Bugsy's shed skin cocoons can be quite a bit stally, especially with status from fire types. But the Technician Quick Attack Scyther is a monster. This thing was already a monster, as we mentioned before, and now it just got stronger and deadlier. U-Turn is a fantastic move. Even if it isn't boosted by Technician, it's still ridiculously strong for this point in the game, and it's stab boosted. Plus it also has focus energy, so just crits. This thing's a beast. Even rock types and Quilava will still take a good amount of damage from this thing, because Quilava only has Ember by this point. Oh, Whitney, the games have been kind to you. And also unkind. While yes, her Clefairy is quite strong, Metronome does have a much more expanded move pool, it isn't really the biggest threat. However, its ability with Cute Charm can be quite infuriating. This is because most starters tend to be males, and fighting types, the only one available to you right now, aside from Heracross, is Machamp, is generally male more than female. It means it can unconventionally stall you. Heracross, though, does cut through her team like a hot knife through butter, but it is only a single Pokemon, and Brick Break is... When it comes to her Clefairy, this thing has Encore, which is ridiculously annoying. And her Miltank is fast, bulky, and very annoying. Again, this thing is still a monster. It has a Lumberry now for curing any status conditions you may try inflicting on it, and also Milk Drink. This thing has Sustain, it has status curing, it's a monster. It can still hit ground and rock types pretty hard because it does have very good bulk by this point, and it can just be annoying as well as it does have Sustain. It's not a bad Pokemon. It's not a bad Pokemon. Morty, also big spike in difficulty. Now, Ghost type moves are special. Now, the Ghastly line has Levitate. And that Shadow Ball is backed up by a brutal, by this point, 130 special attack, and making it go as fast as it is, a 110 speed. This thing is a monster. This thing is an actual monster. Yes, Shadow Claw TM is available before this fight, as well as Togepi does have extrasensory, but even for this point, because stats are not really catching up as quickly, it can actually take a good hit from Shadow Claw, especially if not backed up by Stab. He also has a lot of Sleep and Dream Eater set up. Chuck's Double Team Primeape is actually quite good and also quite fast. It can actually take a hit for this point in the game and potentially set up more than a few double teams. It's not the most likely thing in the world, but it can potentially do that, and it also does hit quite hard with Rock Slide. And if it can land a Focus Punch, you're done. The bulky Poliwrath has Surf, and again, Focus Punch, alongside Hypnosis and Body Slam, so this thing has status tech to really make your day annoying and really get off that potential Focus Punch. Not a bad setup, team. Don't steal her heart. Jasmine is back ironclad with her Magnemite duo and Steelix. Again, they're fantastic. Yes, Magnemite is not the greatest thing by this point. Stats have somewhat curbed it, but it's still a fairly bulky Pokemon, neutrally speaking, and resistance-wise, as well as Steelix is still quite good. It also does have Screech, which is pretty good considering its physical moves. And especially if you're paralyzed, this thing does work. Price, though, is not great. Seal is just bad. It has no water moves, but his Dugong does have Rest Talk, so it can be a bit of a difficult opponent in that respect. It also is decently bulky with Sustain, as we've been over. His Piloswine with the potential of having perfectly accurate Blizzards is actually quite strong. Yes, a Blizzard is not the strongest coming off of its special attack, but it is still Blizzard. And also, considering its levels, not evolved starters for this fight. Special Mud Bomb, though, is not exactly the best, but it overall can do some damage. And now, Claire. Gyarados can do some damage with Dragon Rage, but also still has Intimidate, so it is still pretty good. Again, Dragonite isn't exactly great, but it isn't bad. Oh yeah, again, her Dragonair, despite not great stats, still has a pretty solid typing. And his other moves more than make up for this. The first having Thunder Wave, Fire Blast, and Dragon Pulse, and the second having Thunder Wave, Aqua Tail, and Dragon Pulse. Not bad. However, her ace is still the monstrous Kingdra, and it is even more monstrous now than it was last time. Hyper Beam, Smokescreen, Hydro Pump, and Dragon Pulse pack a huge punch and have great disruption tech. Also worth noting, nothing but another Kingdra can hit it for a weakness. So there's also that. And unlike before, you don't have the badge boost when you're facing this thing. This thing's pure dialyzed brutality when it fights you. And the non-existent in this game, Empoleon, is the only thing to resist both its stabs. Well, Shedinja too, but Shedinja doesn't count. Yeah, you're taking neutral damage regardless from this thing. It's a menace. Team Rocket was always bad from the start, but let's just have a look at them. Proton's Slowpoke Well is bad. Leech Life. This ain't Generation 8 Proton. You're playing too far in the future. Try again. In 3 gens. Maybe you'll have a chance then. Coughing is okay, at least for this point in the game, so it's not bad. But its only means of damage is to avoid, and is avoided by a Smoke Scream and get poison rack-up damage. Really not the best. Up next in the Rocket HQ there is Petrel, but Zubat by now, even though it has better moves, is heavily outstatted by literally every other Pokemon. The same applies to Coughing. Sure, it's physically bulky, but its core special defense is exposed by this far in the game, and it still has very bad moves. Raticate is actually quite good at this point because it does have a very good moveset, but it's still not exactly stellar. It's decent at best. Ariana, though, because you're in a multi-battle here with Lance, who has a ridiculously high-level Dragonite, her team doesn't even matter. You can see it right now, but because you're fighting with a level 40 Dragonite on your team, even if she had good Pokemon, she couldn't stand up to anything. Time to strap on our Proton packs back into the Goldenrod or Radio Tower, which they have taken over. Golbat is actually surprisingly not terrible. And Weezing is actually quite bulky. It can Sludge Stall with Smokescreen, not horribly bad. It's not horribly bad. It can actually do some things. It's not a whole lot of great, but it actually can do something. Though Petrel loses any goodwill he might have had with 5 Coughing, which are extremely weak even physically by this point. Best thing they can do is just self-detonate with Self-Destruct. And that's a trade KO, if that. And even Weezing's better stats don't really pose a huge threat because they're just the only thing on this team with actually decent stats across the board. Who would agree? Again, its still best option is just going kaboom with Explosion, and that's a trade KO. Up next is Ariana alone this time, but even with Lance out of the way, she's still kind of a joke. Galarian Arbok may be a bit cheeky of a wind paralysis chance, but Poison Sting is just perfect. Crunch isn't exactly also threatening as well, given our box stats. Sure, it has Intimidate, but not great. Vileplume is a quite decent poison type when it has the right moves. Mega Drain? Acid? Really? And Murkrow is just nothing by this point. And lastly, Archer. I said Archer, not Archie! There we go. And much of the same is applicable to his team as it was to the Friars. Weak Pokemon, especially Houndour by this point. And again, Houndoom could have been better if it was given better special attacks. And even just decent moves. Yeah, Team Rocket is a joke. Rival time. Terrible. Okay, that's not fair to say. It is actually the best his team can actually have by this point, so it's pretty good. The Burned Tower, his team is not great, aside from the Magnet, which definitely can't put the hurt on teams. Includes Great Resistance, Sonic Boom, and Paralysis Tech. The fourth fight is where his team does get a bit more fearsome. Golbat is actually not bad by this point, and even though Magnemite's switch of Thundershock to Spark, given its very pitiful 35 physical attack, the move also having only base 65 power doesn't actually make up for it. However, Sneasel does have a very good physical Feint attack, so it is quite respectable, and his starter is hardly bad, given it is fully evolved in Meganium and Feraligatr. Despite his poor offenses, Petal Dance can sting. Same of Haunter's 115 base special attack Shadow Balls. However, by the time you get to Victory Road, his team has really fallen off. Magneton only has physical moves, and now even lacks Sonic Boom. Its only pressure is potentially Paralysis. Kadabra is not great by this point, and Sneasel and Golbat have just become so horribly outstatted it's not even worth mentioning. However, Haunter and his starters are actually quite good. They do somewhat hold the line, but again, they can't do it all on their own. We'll be going over his post-game teams later, but now on to the Elite Four. Will we win or will win? Whose will win the willest? Xatu has a not great special attack, but it does have U-turn, so it can get a little bit of a hit on dark types and opposing psychic types. And Confuse Ray can be a little bit of good disruption attack. Jinx is not great. It can take a special hit quite well, but it only has Psychic as a special stab. Ice Punch is pitiful given its garbage physical attack stat, as well as the fact that Ice Punch is also not the strongest move out there. Executor, though, is quite decent. It is quite bulky, it has a bit of a strong special attack, and with Reflect and Hypnosis, it has very good support and disruption tech now. Slowbro is a tank through and through. Curse, Amnesia. Nothing wrong with that. Another Xatu, this time having different moves. Aerial Ice is not good, but still, like Confuse Ray, can do a bit of work even if they aren't the greatest thing. Ominous Wind isn't great, but also isn't terrible. It can hit Psychic and Ghost types for a little bit of damage. Koga's Ninja Strike tactics are moving in next. First up is Ariados, which even though it isn't exactly a great special attacker, given how many rock types are 4 times weak to grass, this can definitely do a bit of damage with Giga Drain. And Stab Poison Jab is a pretty strong, well, stab. Considering his Japanese name is Poison Stab. And Spiderweb can actually leave opponents trapped, and its Baton Pass can pass that trap potential onto an ally, locking them into an advantageous matchup. Not bad, to allow them to set up and get their work done. The Venomoth having Shield Dust prevents it from all secondary effects moves have to offer, and with Supersonic it can stall potentially, because remember, Confusion back then was a little bit better than it is today, so it's not terrible. And also, it does have Toxic, so it can actually stall quite well. Psychic allows us to strike poison types immune to Toxic as well. Only Steel types are safe from this thing. His Fortress fully embraces stall potential with Protect, Toxic Spikes. This can spread poison throughout an entire team and bulk out to let the damage rack up. Well, it does again a stellar defensive type combination, only weak to a single typing. Yes, Swift is weak and it has a poor special attack, but this thing isn't meant to deal upfront damage, it's meant to deal residual over time. But when its health gets low enough, tick, tick, boom, it goes for Explosion. This is also back when Explosion was still very powerful, so that will definitely sting. Muck continues the stall potential, minimize, Toxic, not bad. Screech allows us to drop defenses and, I guess, Gunk Shot, but it has nothing for Steel types, but again, there's not many Steel types. And this is actually not a bad, now this isn't a terrible combination of attacks. Yes, Gunk Shot is very bad, and it's not great, but this thing's meant to just do poison stall damage. Really, that's all it needs. Today's Crowbat, again, it continues much of the same. It can take a hit, but it's not going to be likely to stack up enough double teams to potentially reliably get the evasion off. But if it can, Poison Fang, just for even more poison to hit things that are flying or levitating that are immune to the toxic spikes, it can still poison you. But outside of that, its moves are just weak. Wing Attack and Quick Attack aren't great. He really does rely on that poison damage. This is one of the things where it's actually very good or very bad. Poison is extremely destructive, but the problem is that poison also isn't exactly reliable. A lot of his tactics rely on either evasion or stalling, and that always isn't possible. That isn't always possible. But again, his team can do some good work. Up next is Bruno. And the physical special split has been very kind to him, especially with abilities. Technician Hitmontop is not a bad lead. Hitmonlee does have very good stats, and Swagger is a nightmare. Focus Energy and High Jump Kick, Blaze Kick, very good, especially with the Reckless boosting those high jump kicks. Hitmonchan can finally embrace the physical elemental punches, paired up with its excellent Iron Fist ability. Yes, Onix is the weak point of his team, but it's an Onix. It's not unexpected, it's bad. But it can at least hit a flying type for some decent damage. Machamp, though, is where everything comes together. No Guard is stellar, allowing it to hit Pokemon using Fly. Yes, this is a thing I have learned the hard way. Cross Chop is excellent. Again, No Guard backing that up, especially with its high crit rate. 120 base power Revenges, and even Ghost types are not safe because of Foresight. This team really packs a punch. Karen is up next, and let's see how well she goes. Umbreon is a monster lead. It is a freaking brick wall. Impeccable bulk across the board, double team for stall, confusion again for stall, and payback. This thing can hit surprisingly hard for a wall. Vileplume Stun Sport is very respectable considering it's very good tech, and Moonlight can allow it to have some good sustain, and Petal Dance has great power. Really only Acid isn't great, but its other moves more than compensate. Gengar is a bit funky. Lick is something, not great, it's something. But Spite and Destiny Bond are excellent tech moves. This thing is meant as a trap, allowing it to spite down things, or if you're going to KO it, just Destiny Bond and it takes you with it. Not a bad strategy to something that actually is used competitively. It's meant to be a counter bait killer. Not bad. And again, it also has Focus Blast. Again, this thing's a counter bait killer. Murkrow, though, is just bad. Super Luck can't save it, even with the double crit power that this generation had. But her Houndoom is a fearsome monster. Nasty Plot, Flamethrower, Dark Pulse. You don't need a fourth move with this thing. This thing's a beast. Those Nasty Plot boosted moves, if it can get those off, you're baked to a crisp. I guess Crunch is just there for hitting special walls. I don't know. Champion Lance is up next. And, oh boy, Intimidate Gyarados for the lead. This is going to be a heck of a team. Intimidate, Waterfall on a Gyarados, that's really all you need. Flail is good damage when it's at low health, and Ice Fang is something for other Dragon types, I guess. Not great, but it's something. There's really not much to say with Gyarados. It's a physical Gyarados. That's really all you have to say. It's physical, it's a Gyarados, it's a beast. Aerodactyl is a bit scary, yes? And this is actually because now that the badge boosts are no longer a thing, its Rock Slides will be doing more damage. Thunderfang isn't great, but it's something. Crunch, not terrible, but not great as well. Aerial Ace isn't a great move, but at least it's stab. But it also is quite frail. Unfortunately, his Charizard can't keep up the momentum. Fire Fang, Dragon Claw, and Shadow Claw aren't bad, but only from an 85 physical attack. This is no Gen 1 Hyper Beam. This is no Gen 2 Hyper Beam. At least Air Slash is a very respectable move. But this Charizard really just hurts me to look at. What also hurts me to look at is his Dragonite. All three of them, but for very different reasons. These three things are monsters. As we've been over with Cynthia, the badge boosts no longer be a thing, and that makes their outstatting shine. The other thing that's just the icing on the cake of doom, you cannot get a pseudo-legendary to fight on par with these things. These things are under-level Dragonite. They are level 49. This means you need to get yours over-leveled to 55. You're not in the same of Tyranitar. You are not going to be able to fight this thing on even stat footing unless you are using the legendaries. These things are monsters. They also have great moves. Backing up, they're great offenses and great bulk, and pretty respectable speed for that bulk and attack. As well as both legendaries match very poorly against them. Ice types also wouldn't even want to face these things because they have Fire Blast and Thunder. because most ice types are also partially water and have not the best special outside of Lapras. They also have poor stats generally. Thunder Wave and Dragon Rush are just great moves, great tech and power respectively on 2 of them. With Fire Blast and Outrage on the last one. Brutal, Outrage, and Dragon Rush. Those are powerful moves coming off its great physical attack, backed up by Stab. And their excellent base power. Hyper Beam lets them blast physical walls by targeting weaker special defense. Nothing really can face these things easily and safely. Lance, very worthy of being the champion of this region. Now, onto the gyms of Kanto. First up is Lieutenant Surge in, team's crap. Nothing with base power over 65 outside of Self-Destruct, on top of only having Pokemon whose traits of note are fast. He's got Paralysis and Evasion, but that's all he's got, and even then it isn't exactly reliable. Sabrina has 3 Pokemon, and it really isn't anything we haven't seen before from Will. She's basically just a diet version of Will, and that's really she's just a diet version of Will. But at the very least, they are better than Lieutenant Surge's quality over quantity. Reflect Alakazam is not bad, especially utilizing its actually stellar speed in order to set them up reliably fast. Sure, if it's very poor physical defense, not a bad strategy. Again, something you did see competitively for a while. And again, it also has a strong Psychic. That's beyond Combine Psychic Shadow Ball. Pretty good, even if Skill Swap is basically useless, it does have a nice moveset otherwise. Filter with Light Screen on Mr. Mime is actually not bad. It can let it take a physical hit. It can survive neutral hits potentially, and with those, it might even survive a super effective hit. Not bad. Erica is definitely not the greatest. Jump Bluff and Tangela are extremely frail by this point and heavily outstatted by almost everything. And their moves aren't too threatening, at least up front. Jump Bluff can be infuriating with its naturally fast stats and the fact that it can set up Sunny Day to allow a full Chlorophyll team to play. Lead Seed and U-Turn are absolutely annoying. Tangela isn't bad move-wise. It does have some good sleep tech, especially again utilizing that Chlorophyll. Ring Out is okay-ish, but Ancient Power is a nice attempt, even if it's not good. Victory Bell is scary. This thing has Synthesis, and is even more powerful if Sun is set up because, again, as we've been over, Chlorophyll, and also this thing has Leaf Storm, which is very, very, very strong. Blossom can also set up Sun and has the brutal Solar Beam backing it, so even it has redundancy, and Synthesis to its heart's delight. Janine, following the trend of diet versions of the Elite Four, is a poor imitation of her father Koga's team of Poison Stall tech. It has Poison, it has Confuse, but it doesn't have much of the evasion save for Double Team on Venomoth, though Swagger Screech is actually a very nice combination. Misty is not great. Her moves are exceptionally poor by this point. Her Lapras, though, is quite strong, and while Starmie is fast, but no stab other than a Water Pulse. At the very least, Quagsire does have Earthquake, and again, that can sure up things, but it's one Pokemon. Brock, again, is the same deal at Misty, except worse. He has a full quad weakness team, and 3 of the 5 are not fully evolved Pokemon. Well, everything has garbage special defense, so unless it can get Sand Up, they're pretty much going to die to a neutral hit. Blaine, at the very least, does bring something to the table. Overheat with 3 white herbs, hardly a bad thing. And Sunny Day Flare Blitz Rapidash, we've been over this before, it's a monster. Even his Pokemon aren't especially great. Blue is smelling us later, or at least he hopes to. Executor is a pretty decent Pokemon, and Leaf Storm is quite strong. Hypnosis Tech is also quite good. And Trick Room is not exactly terrible, considering he does have a couple of good slow Pokemon on his team. This applies especially with Rhydon. It is slow, has great power, and pretty good moves. Other than really the weak Thunder Fang. it can definitely be a force of nature, given the chance. It's one of the few Pokemon that, even if it isn't fully evolved, is still absolutely stellar because it was originally intended as a fully evolved Pokemon. Arcanine, extreme speed, decently strong. Flare Blitz, very strong. Roar, not great. Dragon Pulse, at least nice coverage. Not bad, but not great. But also, it's still Pack and Intimidate. Gyarados, same deal. Waterfall, Ice Fang, Return, and Dragon Dance. This thing's nightmarish. This thing is what nightmares are made of. Well, other than it's allergic to electricity. And a no-guard Dynamic Punch Stone Edge Machamp. Earthquake and Thunder Punch. This thing's a monster. This thing's got great coverage and great power. The same, unfortunately, can't be said about his Pidgeot. Even after all these years, he still doesn't learn. Again, you can't teach an idiot new tricks. It's pathetically weak. Mirror Move is not good. Air Slash and Return aren't terrible, but they're good moves on Pokemon with better stats, which again, Pidgeot doesn't have. He's got some decent Pokemon, and his team overall is actually quite strong. It's just brought down by one Pokemon in one case. Not bad otherwise. Silver has some Kanto battles. The Mount Moon match is weak. Just weak. Gengar and Alakazam, they're not bad, and the starter is quite strong. Manton does have a decent discharge, and it is, of course, strong and bulky as we've been over before, but everything else is not exactly great. And even Alakazam aren't the best, but they're not horrible. So it is worth noting there actually is a multi-battle between your rival, Silver, and you, and Claire and Lance in the Dragon's Den. This isn't going to matter too heavily, but it is a bit of a neat thing to go over. Both Claire and Lance have very good, very strong Pokemon, and this is actually made pretty hard by your rival's less than stellar lineup of Pokemon. After this, your rival is now at the Indigo Plateau for your final battle with him. And his team is not terrible comparatively before, but that is also saying a whole lot. Gengar does have 2 stabs, decent moveset on his Magnemite. Even though it is not the greatest thing, it does at least have Thunder Wave. Sneasel is just trash. Crowbat is particularly poor by now, but Alakazam with Focus Blast and Psychic is quite good, and his starter does at least have a passable move for a stab. His team is not great, but it's hardly pathetic. Elite Four, Round 2, let's begin. Will now has a fantastic Bronzong. Along with the Gravity, it can really do some damage. Considering it has Heat Proof rather than Levitate, it doesn't interfere with its ability, so still has only a single weakness to Ground. Its Gravity does a great job of supporting allies with poor accuracy, because a lot of them actually do have very good support moves that are accuracy based, or rather they do have good tech moves that have poor accuracy naturally. It has Psychic, but Bronzong isn't really the attacking type. It's much more the team support type. Payback, though, can sting Ghost types quite well, because again, it is also neutral to Ghost in this generation. Jinx is a perfect follow-up to the Heavy Metal Rockin' Bell, because it does have some excellent low accuracy moves that are quite powerful. Lovely Kiss, Blizzard, excellent. Fake Tears and Dream Eater? If this comes after Gravity, this thing is a monster. Grumpig is not exactly a great Pokemon offensively, but it does have some unusually high bulk and some interesting techie moves. It's not bad, but also not especially stellar. As said before, Slowbro is fantastic, it's bulky, it's got setup moves, it's just all around good. Gardevoir is not bad, especially if it gets off a Calm Mind or a Charge Beam boost, paired up with its pretty good special attack. Even Dark and Steel types won't want to be facing this thing because of Focus Blast. Xatu is, however, his weakest link, despite being his ace. Its moveset is still unchanged, but now its stats really hold up poorly because of how things are outstatting. Stab Psychic and Covered Shadow Ball are decent. It will at least be able to get off a hit before going down, though. Koga's changed and already for the better. A Poison Dark type Skuntank for all those menacing Psychic types that prey on his team before. Much better. Big and Toxic do stall quite well. And when it's low, it can always go boom. Really, Earthquake is all this thing will fear. Venomoth has been upgraded and it very much needed in the first place. The only thing I could think of that's probably better is Bug Buzz over Silverwind, but really that's not saying a whole lot because this thing is pretty good as it is. It can pass Evasion or a potential Omni Boost. Toxicroak, it's a pretty semi-solid beat stick. Especially one that can wall up all those rock ground... This is one that can wall up those rock and steel types that resist its poison type team. And of course, Swagger can be a pain. While Muck has no damaging moves, its old set plus Swagger is actually quite infuriating. Crowbat is just a strict downgrade. It has lost its evasion tech, so its basically one redeeming factor is gone. However, it can actually stall with Fly. Because it has Toxic, it can also survive a hit potentially. Throws out a Toxic, flies up, let the damage rack up. Not terrible, but also not great. Swalot is actually quite good. It has good mixed bulk. It is very, very good in that respect. Amnesia helps shore up special defense. It also has leftovers. And also Pain Split, just to recover health if you go damage it. So it can set up some boosts, hit you with a Pain Split after setting it up, and just restores health. Not bad. It has Sustain, and it's pretty good Sustain. Yawn, again, also very good. It can put things to sleep, go to work, boosting up, Pain Splitting, and just deal out some damage. The only problem is that Sleep does not pair up well with its bulk because Toxic Stall will be its ideal strategy. Because it is inflicting sleep, it has to go with Sludge Bomb as a damaging option, which is not exactly stellar given it doesn't have the greatest offensive stats. Bruno's beatdown time, again, his Technician Hitmontop. It's not as good as an Intimidate one, but it's still quite good. It has Earthquake, Close Combat for excellent damage across the board. And Quick Attack to close a KO. Unfortunately, Hitmonlee loses its ruthlessly powerful Reckless boosted high jump kicks, trading out for Swagger and Reversal, with very powerful low HP and a brutal close combat help it actually get to low health very quickly. It's hardly a poor trade-off. Substitute Hitmonchan is not bad considering it can hide behind a sub, close combat, and pretty much ignore the drops. Iron Fist also juicing up Drain Punch and Bullet Punch is not bad. Bulk up Hariyama, absolutely solid. Payback hitting those Ghost and Psychic types quite hard. Low Kick is not exactly great, but it's meant more as a counter killer. No Guard Machamp, Stone Edge, Dynamic Punch, Brutal, Foresight hits Ghost types, and Bullet Punch. It's pretty good. However, Lucario is not great. It's par for the course. It does have a very strong close combat, or at least it has a good enough close combat, but it is also quite frail, though Extreme Speed is good for closing a KO. Though Counter is pretty useless. Iron Tail is kind of useless, all things considered, because Fairy doesn't exist at this point. It's at least better than Cynthia's. Karen is up next, and Weavile at least has Ice Punch, so it does have some good stabs. Lokic is not horrible, given most things it is weak to are weak to fighting themselves, and also generally tend to be quite heavy. Much like Bruno with Lucario, Karen's Spirit Tomb is better than Cynthia's. Curse and Pain Split for stall, excellent right there. And Sucker Punch isn't great, but it is okay, at least for closing a KO if I'm low enough health. And Detect just to let damage rack up, not bad at all. A pretty haxy Honchkrow with Thunder Wave, and two pretty decent stabs with the questionable Whirlwind? But at least it can spread status, but it is also quite frail, so it really can't Whirlwind quite well. But overall, it's not bad. Intimidate. Houndoom is just as terrifying as it was before. But Fairy doesn't exist, so why Sludge Bomb? Maybe for, like, Poliwrath or Houndoom itself? I don't know. Anyway, rounding out her team is the Brick Wall Umbreon. This time it's trading Tanky Evasion Stall for Curse Outmuscling with Sucker Punch. I gotta say, that's an improvement. Umbreon is Brick Wall as it is, and this thing lets it be even more Brick Wall with even more aggressive power. Not bad. It's just rude. It's just really rude. Champion Lance, once again, Intimidate lead again, but this time in the form of the Mighty Salamence. Flamethrower, great move. Stab Dragon Claw, great. Rest is a little questionable, but hey, it's got Sustain at least. And Shadow Claw, not bad. Oh yeah, he still has his Intimidate Sea Monster in Gyarados. Don't think he just swapped out one Intimidator for the other. He's got two of them. Much improved with Dragon Dance, Waterfall, Thunder Wave, and I guess Ice Fang? For other Dragon types? You give this thing an inch, it takes a mile. Again, it is definitely allergic to electric, though. Swords Dance Garchomp. I don't think anything else needs to be said about this thing. But that doesn't mean we're not going to anyway. 2 lethal stabs. This thing's a beast. It will eat your nightmares like they're cotton candy. Again, only a Levitate Bronzong or Squirmer will not have the fear of RKS instilled in this thing. Though his Altaria is the ugly duckling. Dragon Breath is not strong, and Hyper Beam is pretty bad from its 70 base special attack. It doesn't have the bulk to make Double Team Stall a possibility, but Parasong is really its one trick. It's meant for paralysis attack, and they had to build in some weak link into his team, I guess. Charizard! This time having Flamethrower and Hyper Beam, it is quite a good upgrade. Still has Shadow Claw, though. Though his Dragonite is not as good compared to its prior set. The only change is Draco Meteor. And even though, yes, it does have a quite good power boost in terms of base power, it has a lower special attack. This kind of counterbalances the fact that Outrage was weaker in base power, but used a stronger physical attack. The much stronger Draco Meteor uses the weaker special attack. So it kind of comes out to even base power. The reason why this is overall worse is that to use Draco Meteor means he has to neutralize his own special attack, making him weaker at overall damage output. The prior set gave him versatility between defensive sets and also just let him not interfere with his own damage output. Though he definitely has ramped up his team a good bit. But I don't think we're done just yet. We have one more trainer to face. Red atop Mount Silver. And again, even levels, his team's not especially great. Even with the Light Ball, Pikachu's Volt Tackles aren't exactly terrifying because it's so frail. Lapras, though, is quite bulky. It is also worth mentioning, it is hailing in this battle. So there is permanent hail unless the weather is changed. This means it will have reliable blizzard access. That's terrifying. Snorlax is again a supremely bulky Pokemon, and even though it does have Blizzard itself, again, it is perfectly accurate. You might as well have it. Crunch. It does at least have a good move in Giga Impact. It is very powerful in terms of stab. Though again, I do question the Shadow Ball when it actually does have Crunch, so... Venusaur is very bulky, has quite respectable power, and also has Sleep Powder Tech, as well as the Brutal Frenzy Plant. This thing can really kick some grass. Blastoise is bulky, has respectable coverage across the board, and again, it bears repeating 100 accurate blizzards. Not bad. And the Drowning Hydro Cannon. And naturally, last up is Charizard. Pretty solid mixed offensive set. Air Slash and Dragon Pulse, not bad. The pure brute force of Flare Blitz does offset its rather poor physical attack to compensate, and Blast Burn really turns up the heat. Even if the Kanto starters don't have the greatest of stats across the board, the fact they have a 150 base power stab move really compensates. That really compensates. Yes, it requires a turn of recharge, but it's still brutally powerful. This is where things are a bit interesting. Compared to Platinum, things actually are a lot more even. And the reason for this is that the Pokemon may not be as good in a number of fights. Yes, the fights in this game, in a lot of cases, are actually significantly easier when it comes to gym battles, rival, and the evil team leaders. They're significantly easier. But it's also worth mentioning the Pokemon quality of Johto is not as good as it was in Sinnoh. That's a big thing that we do have to mention, that we did mention previously with Fire Red Leaf Green. A lot of the Pokemon that are accessible within Johto are Johto and Kanto Pokemon, which this was before the time when Pokemon were really deliberately made with good stats. And this game still does have its own array of difficult fights, so that is important to remember. A lot of the difficulty really comes in sort of periodic spikes. You have Whitney, but even despite that, there are actually a number of difficult fights. Bugsy, Whitney, Morty, all three of those are monsters. Price isn't exactly hard, but he does have some interesting tech. Claire, very difficult. The Elite Four, and of course Lance himself first time through, they are quite difficult. They have very good teams, especially in considering the Pokemon accessible to the player at this point. And that's really where things get interesting. I wouldn't say this game is harder than Platinum, but I also wouldn't say it's easier than Platinum. I'd say it's actually comparatively on par with it, and that is due to the fact that, again, Pokemon access. That is the big thing that does need to be remembered. The starters in Johto are not as powerful. Yes, Heracross is a very strong Pokemon, but it is one significant Pokemon. A lot of things also don't really learn that great moves, and a lot of the better TMs are not accessible to the player, which is one, again, handicapping thing. So again, the game is actually comparative in difficulty with Platinum. Mileage will vary, but overall, they actually are relatively on par. However, including post-game, it, again, still kind of stays the same. The Elite Four is actually significantly harder than it was the first time through, but Lance, again, same with Lance. Red is a joke, but also so with the Kanto gym leaders, they're also a bit of a joke, so again, counterbalances. And that's just, again, that's interesting. I still say that these games do come out comparatively even with one another, but that's again the same thing here, the thing we've been over before when it came to Fire Leaf Green. When things are this similar because of the Pokemon accessible, it is extremely difficult to make a concrete, more difficult, less difficult. That's why I say they're on par with one another. It doesn't mean that, oh, this thing is like always harder, always easier, it's, better teams, better this, better that. It comes down to, yes, worse teams are at play on the opposing side in more cases, but at the same time, your options are not as good, which means it's a bit of a mitigating factor, as opposed to, say, Sinnoh, where you have a lot better Pokemon in the region. Sinnoh is full of Pokemon that have very good stat distributions, very good move pools, good move access. The same is not the same of Johto, and that does add a bit of a difficulty thing. So that's really where things come down. Gen 4? Yeah, Gen 4 was overall a big spike up, and I would definitely say, though, the select fights of Johto are harder than select fights of Sinnoh. The champion fights are significantly harder in this game because Lance has 3 Dragonite, they're just monsters. Lance has an overall solid team. Cynthia just didn't. But again, these games are roughly on par with one another, and next time, we'll be loading up Unova. See you guys then.